Hey everyone, welcome to today's Gen Lit Cult 2026 Gender, Literatures and Culture, Diversity, Emotions and Language Learning being happened in Valencia, Spain. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very much thankful and I'm very much obliged for this symposium. My name is Maida Maqsood, and I am a PhD researcher in applied linguistics at Shenzhen University, China. My academic journey has always been driven by a fascination with how language evolves through technology and social resistance. From my earlier work in Pragma-Stylistic feminist poetry to current focus on generative AI, my research title today is Mapping Feminist Resistance in South Asian English Poetry, a Pragma, Stylistic, and NVivo-Assisted Thematic Analysis. The landscape of feminist literary research is undergoing a radical shift. We are moving away from purely intuitive interpretations toward digital qualitative methods that enhance rigor without sacrificing the delicate sensitivity required for poetry. So my study focuses on two landmark collections from South Asian subcontinent. The first one is Kishwar Nahid from Pakistan, and the second one from India, Meena Kandasamy. So Kishwar Nahid's collection of poetry named as Compositions of a Scorched Heart, and Meena Kandasamy's poetry collection is Miss Militance. So the core problem of I will be discussing the problem statement and significance of the study, the research gap, the research questions, conceptual framework, research methodology, key findings, and at last I will be concluding the whole research. So if I talk about the problem statement, the core problem of my research, the main problem this research addresses is how feminist discourse confronts patriarchal structures within male-dominated societies. While both poetesses are South Asian, they operate in vastly different socio-political environments, one dealing with the institutionalized patriarchy of Zial-Haq regime in Pakistan, and the other navigating the intersection of caste and gender in contemporary India. So, okay. So, now moving toward the research questions. The very first question is what thematic patterns emerged in feminist discourse within the selected poems? Second question, research question, is how do Kishwar Nahid and Meena Kandasamy represent patriarchy, identity, and resistance by studying both a comparative study of both poetesses, both poetry context, Pakistani and Indian literary context. And the third research question is how can NVivo-assisted thematic analysis enhance the rigor of feminist literary research? So, theoretical conceptual framework to analyze these works, I have synthesized three major theoretical pillars. The first I look at Eleni Showalter's periodization of women's writing. Showalter identifies three phases: the feminine phase, the feminist phase, and female phase. And the second pillar is Chandra Talpade Mohante, which argues in feminism without borders, we can simply apply Western frameworks to the third work. And the third pillar is Pragma-Stylistic analysis, Pragma-Stylistic is the integration of stylistics and pragmatics. Stylistics is the study of linguistic choices, and pragmatics is which is the study of language in context. So, in feminist poetry, meaning isn't just in the words; it's in the intended meaning of the utterance. For example, when Nahid calls herself sinful in one of her poetries, the pragmatic effect is not an admission or acceptance or confession of guilt. It is a speech act of rebellion that subverts the labels imposed by patriarchal authorities. Okay, now talking about the methodology, research methodology, we have a question in mind that how do we make literary analysis systematic? So here I have adopted qualitative interpretive design, which is supported by NVivo software. By using purposive sampling, I selected 20 poems, 10 from each poetess, and then these poems are specifically engaged with feminist themes. Then I followed Braun and Clark six-stage thematic analysis procedure. The first stage is familiarization, the second stage is initial coding, the third stage is theme identification, and fourth one is reviewing, then defining, and then reporting. So by using NVivo, I was able to conduct word frequency analysis and sentimental analysis, which provided a textual map of emotional landscape and recurring symbols. So now moving towards the analysis part, the analysis focuses on identifying lexical patterns, emotional tone, and thematic structures within the poetic works of Kishwar Nahid and Meena Kandasamy. The findings are interpreted through the lens of feminist literary theory in order to examine how gender oppression, identify formation, and resistance, which are represented in contemporary South Asian feminist poetry. The results combine computational outputs generated by NVivo with interpretive analysis. Okay, now I will move toward the path of analysis. Wait a minute. Okay. So here is the results of word frequency analysis of Kishwar Nahid. Okay. Word frequency analysis of Kishwar Nahid was conducted to identify dominant lexical patterns in the selected poems, 10 poems from Nahid collection, and the analysis reveals the central linguistic elements that structure feminist discourses within her poetic narrative. So words such as silence, women, voice, freedom, society, body, power, oppression indicate the poetess concerns with the suppression of women's voices within a patriarchal society. The lexical patterns identified through NVivo analysis reinforce the argument that feminist poetry functions as a discursive space for articulating resistance against patriarchal world. Okay, now moving toward the word cloud representation of Nahid lexicon, feminist lexicon, uh, through word cloud visualization and NVivo analysis. Nahid's poetry is shown to systematically construct a discourse centered on gender inequality and ideological struggle by clustering terms associated with both oppression and resistance, such as protest and freedom. Um, the poet moves beyond mere description to actively advocate against patriarchal norms. Lexical approach aligns with the established qualitative methodologies of Baisley and Jackson in 2013 and Braun and Clark in 2006. And with this methodology suggests that the thematic structures reveal the deeper ideological positions and discursive resistance embedded within literary narratives. Okay, now moving toward the word frequency of Kandasamy poetic collection or Kansamy's poetry. The word frequency analysis of Kansamy's poetry reveals a confrontational and militant feminist discourse characterized by a high frequency of terms like fight, women, anger, blood, justice. Unlike more subtle narratives, Kansamy's rhetorical style utilizes in vivo verified lexical patterns to actively challenge oppressive power structures and demand systemic change. So, this radical linguistic approach aligns with Mohanty 2003 framework for post-colonial feminist activism by positioning her work as a form of political protest. And now moving toward the word cloud, okay, word cloud representation of Kandasamy's feminist lexicon. This word cloud visualization reinforces the Kandasamy's poetry, which is anchored in a discourse of resistance with a heavy emphasis of terms related to political struggle, fight, revolt, and justice. So the visual data aligns with quality framework of Creswell and Pott 2018 by illustrating how lexical patterns serve as a mirror for broader ideological conflicts between patriarchal authority and female agency. Okay. Now moving toward the sentimental analysis of both poems. Sentiment distribution in Nahid's poetry and sentiment distribution in Kansamy's poetry. Sentimental analysis or sentiment analysis of both Nahid and Kansami reveal the dominant negative emotional tone, serving as a direct reflection of the systemic oppression and social injustice inherent in patriarchal societies. Nahid's work utilizes these negative sentiments to mirror women's lived experiences, while Kansami's poetry displays as even more intense negative distribution by utilizing aggressive emotional language as a strategic tool for persuasive activist discourse. Aligning with the frameworks of Braun and Clark 2006 and Baisley and Jackson 2013, these findings suggest that for both poetries, emotional intensity is not merely stylistic, but a functional element of feminist protest literature used to challenge social hierarchies. So we can see in the sentimental analysis distribution of Nahid's sentimental analysis results that 68% sentiment are for negative, neutral are 20, and positive are 12%. And for Kansami, sentimental percentage for negative is 72%, neutral is 18%, and positive is 10%. So thematic coding results. Thematic coding results cluster similarity of feminist themes. The cluster analysis demonstrates strong conceptual relationship between patriarchal resistance and empowerment, This pattern supports the argument that feminist literature often portrays oppression and resistance as interconnected processes within gender and politics. And to conclude, while Nahid and Kansami both resist patriarchy, their strategies differ. Nahid's resistance is simmering strength that focuses on reclaiming history from social amnesia. Kansami's resistance is a flaming insurrection that demands immediate annihilation of caste and gender hierarchies. And if about the expected outcome of this digital approach is a more transparent and reproducible framework for literary studies. By integrating NVivo and Pragma-Stylistics, we can systematically prove how these poetries use language as a political instrument. And if we talk about the limitations of the study, despite these contributions, the study has certain limitations. The corpus was limited to selected works of two poetesses, which restrict the generalizability of the findings to the broader landscape of feminist poetry. And if we move toward the future research could expand the dataset to include additional poets from diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds within South Asia, and comparative study involving feminist poetry from other regions could also offer valuable insights into how local socio-political contexts shape feminist literary expressions. Additionally, integrating computational text analysis techniques such as corpus linguistics or sentimental analysis that may further deepen the understanding of linguistic patterns in feminist discourse. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any kind of question, if you have any ambiguity or any thought regarding this research related to gender, related to literature, and related to culture through feminist literary lens, you can ask me.